Emily stared at the Victorian mansion. It loomed large and imposing. Ivy climbed its aged brick walls. The windows, dark and mysterious, seemed to watch her. She clutched the iron key. It felt cold and heavy in her hand. She inherited the house from a distant relative. She never knew him. The house felt both exciting and unsettling. A sense of unease crept over her. The air was thick with the scent of decay. The front door creaked open slowly. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light. The grand foyer stretched before her, shadowed and silent. A heavy silence hung in the air. It pressed against her like a physical weight. She stepped inside, her footsteps echoing. The house felt empty, yet somehow watched. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret. This was her new home. Emily spent the next few days unpacking. The house was filled with antique furniture. She uncovered old portraits. Their eyes seemed to follow her. She found dusty books. Their pages were filled with forgotten stories. The library was her favorite room. It was filled with towering bookshelves. The scent of old paper hung in the air. She ran her fingers along the spines. She imagined the stories held within. One afternoon, while exploring, she noticed something odd. A bookshelf seemed slightly out of place. It was as if it was hiding something. Curiosity gnawed at her. She had to investigate. She pulled at the bookshelf. It swung inward, revealing a small, dark opening. A hidden door. Her heart pounded. A rush of cold air swept out. The air smelled of damp earth and something else, something ancient and unsettling. Emily hesitated at the threshold. The darkness beyond seemed to beckon her. She held her breath. She stepped into the unknown. The air grew colder. The silence deepened. The passage was narrow and low-ceilinged. She had to stoop to walk. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay. The walls were damp and cold to the touch. She could feel a strange energy. The passage twisted and turned. Emily lost all sense of direction. She felt a growing unease. She wanted to turn back, but something compelled her forward. The darkness held a strange allure. She continued deeper into the unknown. The silence was broken only by the sound of her own breathing. It echoed eerily around her. The darkness felt like a living thing. It was closing in on her. The passage opened into a small circular chamber. It was dimly lit by a single shaft of light. The light filtered through a crack in the ceiling high above. Dust motes danced in the beam. The chamber was filled with strange symbols. They were carved into the stone walls. The symbols seemed ancient and unfamiliar. They radiated an unsettling energy. In the center of the chamber stood a stone staircase. It spiraled downwards into darkness. The air grew colder still. Emily shivered. It felt as if something was watching her. She descended the stairs. Each step seemed to take her further from the world above. The darkness enveloped her. The silence was absolute. She felt as if she was entering another realm. Section 5, the Forgotten Room. The staircase ended in a large, rectangular room. It was completely dark. Emily fumbled for a light switch. She found nothing. The darkness was absolute and suffocating. She took a tentative step forward. Her hand brushed against something cold and smooth. It was a wall. She traced its surface. She found another symbol. It was the same as the ones in the chamber above. Slowly, her eyes adjusted to the darkness. She began to make out the shapes of objects in the room. She saw old portraits hanging on the walls. Their eyes seemed to gleam in the darkness. In the center of the room stood an ancient chair. It was made of dark wood. Thick ropes were tied to its arms and legs. The ropes were frayed and stained. The sight sent a chill down Emily's spine. Section 6. Whispers of the Past. Emily felt a cold draft. It seemed to emanate from the chair. She heard a faint whisper. It was as if someone was speaking her name. She spun around, but she was alone. The whispers grew louder. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. They spoke of dark rituals and forgotten secrets. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She noticed the portraits. They seemed to be moving. Their eyes followed her every move. Their lips moved as if they were trying to speak. The whispers intensified. Emily felt a growing sense of dread. She wanted to flee, but her feet were rooted to the spot. The room held her captive. The whispers drew her in. She felt as if she was losing her mind. Section 7. The Rituals Unveiled. Emily stumbled upon a small wooden chest. It was tucked away in a corner of the room. She opened it. Inside, she found an old journal. Its pages were yellowed and brittle. She began to read. The journal belonged to a previous owner of the house. He wrote of strange rituals performed in the forgotten room. The rituals involved the chair and the symbols on the walls. The rituals were meant to summon something dark and powerful. The journal described sacrifices and chants. The words sent shivers down Emily's spine. The final entry in the journal was chilling. It spoke of a being from another realm. It had been summoned. The writer expressed fear and regret. He wrote of his impending doom. Section 8, Trapped in Time. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to be closing in on her. Emily felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She screamed and spun around. There was no one there. The portraits seemed to be alive. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light. Their lips moved in silent screams. The room seemed to be shifting and changing around her. She tried to leave, but the door was gone. The walls seemed to be closing in. She was trapped. The room was alive. It was feeding on her fear. Emily felt a presence behind her. She turned slowly. A dark figure stood in the shadows. It was tall and gaunt. Its eyes glowed red. It reached out for her. Section 9, Vanishing Point. Emily screamed. The figure lunged at her. She closed her eyes, bracing for the inevitable, but nothing happened. She opened her eyes. The figure was gone. The room was silent. The portraits were still. The whispers had ceased. She was alone. She ran to where the door had been. It was still gone. She pounded on the walls. She screamed for help, but no one came. She was trapped in the forgotten room. Emily felt a strange calmness wash over her. She knew she would never escape. The room had claimed her. She was lost in time. Section 10, The Final Entry. The old journal lay open on the floor. The final entry was unfinished. The ink was smudged. It looked as if it had been written in haste. The writer had described the being he had summoned. He had written of its power and its malevolence. He had begged for forgiveness. He had pleaded for his life. The last sentence was incomplete. It simply read, "It has taken her. It has to..." The rest of the sentence was lost. The ink faded into nothingness. The forgotten room remained silent. Emily was gone. The house stood empty. The whispers of the past continued to echo through its halls, waiting for the next victim.